Death has taken our beloved Dennis. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Dennis is the love that united us in life and with death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. Those who wish may join me in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. O God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are a passing shadow. We come and grow like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, and the evening fades and withers. You cause us to revert to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry away nothing. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. God, you redeem the soul of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. For everything there is a season, and a time to every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And now I call upon good friend and family, Uncle Jody.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Katzner, and my wife, Laura, and Dennis's wife, Jan, of blessed memory, are sisters. I'm proud to have been his brother-in-law and even more proud to have been his friend. Dennis was known by a lot of different names to people in this room. Some called him Dennis or Den. Some called him Uncle D. Others knew him as Uncle Honey. And still others knew him as Dad, and perhaps his favorite name of all, Papa. Given that he was the 7th of 9 siblings, I'm guessing that there are some more colorful names that he's been gifted over the years, from myself included, that are probably best left to discussions outside of this eulogy. But as Laura and I reminisced the other night with his daughters, Mandy, Kathy, Jamie, and Danny, it became clear that he deserved yet another name, Teacher. Now, this may be a little surprising, as it might seem a name better suited for his wife, Jan, who actually taught in a classroom for a good part of her working career. But lessons aren't all learned in classrooms, and it's evident that Dennis provided lifelong lessons for his family and for those around him. Judaism, the religion that Dennis converted to when he married Jan, reveres teachers and stresses the importance of sharing lessons from generation to generation. As Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks said in his book, Optimism to Hope, teachers open our eyes to the world. They give us curiosity and confidence. They teach us to ask questions. They connect us to our past and our future. They're the guardians of our social heritage. They are the people who really shape our life. So what lessons did Dennis teach his family and those who knew him that shaped their lives? First, and perhaps foremost, was the importance of helping others. This was exemplified in his service in the Navy, but also in his work with the City of Chesterland Service Department, where he helped keep the residents safe through street repairs, snow plowing, and anything else he could do to help the people who lived there. It's worth mentioning that he sometimes let his girls ride in the snowplow with him, something they very much looked forward to, and that they may or may not have encouraged him to purposefully knock over an occasional trash can, but I won't tell if you won't tell. After he retired from his work in Chesterland, he kept busy helping people. He did handyman work where the old ladies in the neighborhood would call him at all hours of the day or night for one project or another. And he worked at Walmart, helping to assemble bikes that people had purchased. For Dennis, I can only imagine that this was reminiscent of building go-karts with some of his grandkids, time that I know was meaningful to both them and to him. And even in death, he is continuing to help people by being an organ donor, so parts of him will quite literally live on in others. Living in Cleveland gave him ample opportunity to teach lessons in igloo structural engineering and design, as on many significant snowfalls, he could be found in the front yard building an igloo for the girls to play in. Not only did he make them sturdy enough to avoid collapse, but he also made the entryway just big enough so that he could climb in there with him. He was, after all, just a big kid at heart. He taught lessons in creativity and problem solving. For example, I'm told that when he was young, Dennis's mom had all the kids pick strawberries to help make jam. Each kid would be responsible for filling a basket with strawberries and then have to dump them on the table where they could be cleaned and prepped. Dennis, who apparently didn't enjoy spending his time picking strawberries, would fill his basket nearly to the top with grass. And then he only had to pick enough strawberries to cover the top and make it look like the basket was full, which may or may not have ultimately resulted in a bunch of grass getting dumped on the kitchen table. Like I said, creative. But my personal favorite story of Dennis's creativity and problem solving occurred when he was in the process of converting to Judaism. As part of that process, it's customary to go to the mikveh, the Jewish ritual bath. When Dennis and the rabbi arrived at the building, the mikveh was locked and the rabbi didn't have a key. Dennis turned to the rabbi and said, "Don't worry, Rabbi, I got you," and promptly took a credit card out of his wallet, jimmied the lock, and then stepped aside so that the rabbi could enter first. We'll never know what the rabbi actually thought of Dennis demonstrating this particular skill, but it would only be a bit of an exaggeration to say that his ability to open a locked door with a credit card made his Jewish wedding to Jan possible. Sometimes his students were so anxious to learn from him that they started perhaps a bit too early. When she was about 3 years old, his daughter Danny managed to climb into the family's big blue panel van and knock the transmission from park into neutral, causing the van to roll down the driveway, across the street, and almost take out the neighbor's picture window. Some might call this an accident where thank goodness no one got hurt. But I think Danny simply couldn't wait to get driving lessons from her dad, something she finally got to do 13 years later. Sometimes Dennis's teachings were a little hard to interpret. During the holiday of Passover, Jews follow any number of dietary restrictions, including not eating leavened bread. Apparently, after at least one Passover meal, Dennis decided that the matzah and the brisket weren't enough to satisfy his hunger, so he ordered a pizza and ate it in the garage. When the incriminating pizza box was discovered, he promptly spoke up and blamed his non-Jewish niece who was living with them at the time. I'm sure there are lessons to be learned from this that Dennis was trying to teach us, and I could probably figure it out if I didn't find it so very Dennis and so absolutely hilarious. He taught lessons about handling various household tasks. He could cook and was known to make everything from chili to shepherd's pie to butterbean casserole to pizza to almost anything on the grill. But he also wasn't above serving up helpings of Cap'n Crunch cereal and milk for dinner when Jan was at a PTO meeting. And probably from his time in the Navy, he obsessed over the way the laundry was folded. Everything had hospital corners and pristine lines, and he didn't need an iron to do it. If he saw you doing it incorrectly, he'd grab it and show you just how to do it properly. One of Dennis's favorite hobbies over the years was golf, and he taught lessons there too. I had the good fortune to play with him on many different occasions where he taught me how to hit beautiful 290-yard draws off the tee, hit the middle of the green from 180 yards out, and consistently sink almost every putt from within 10 feet. Okay, truth be told, neither he nor I could do any of those things because we were both absolutely terrible at golf. But he taught me how to enjoy the time with friends on the course because a bad day of golf beats a good day of work, even if you shoot 58 on the front nine. He also taught a love for music, and particularly classic rock. He enjoyed playing drums and guitar, and when not in front of an instrument, he would often play drums on the table with his fingers, something I found myself doing today on the steering wheel while we were driving here. Def Leppard, Pink Floyd, Poison, AC/DC, Styx, Pat Benatar, and the list could go on. There are even vinyl albums and, yes, 8-track tapes at his house with some of his favorite music. Kathy said to me that the lyrics to many of the songs still play in her head, and it's certainly true that music can create memories across generations. And perhaps some of those best memories were when Dennis would take his granddaughters to daddy-daughter dances. I have no idea whether he tipped the DJ to play Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC, but I certainly wouldn't have put it past him. What I do know, though, is how much both he and his granddaughters cherished those memories. And patience. He taught patience in so many ways. He was a Cleveland sports fan, after all, and if the consistent cries of wait till next year aren't a sign of patience, I don't know what is. And before each game, he'd text, "Go nobody," to Jamie, because after all, isn't it easier to be patient watching sports when you're rooting for, well, nobody? He also demonstrated patience while doing handyman work in the house and teaching some of those skills. His son-in-law, Randy, was clearly a star pupil, and if you've seen any of Randy's work, you'd know just how well he learned and how proud Dennis was of him. But not all students were quite as successful, as Dennis tried to teach Mandy how to grout tile, and 6 months later, Dennis was back, patiently, redoing the entire section of tile that Mandy had done. And it was a whole other level of patience he demonstrated the time he tried to build bedrooms in the attic and his feet fell through the ceiling, leaving him dangling there. His family called the neighbors, but it seemed to be less a call for help than it was a call to come laugh at Dennis, who was now stuck in the ceiling. I guess it's true that no good deed goes unpunished. Dennis also taught lessons in reading and how to have a sense of humor. Danny recently shared a video of Dennis reading a book to one of his grandchildren about a donkey who was good-looking, getting into mischief, hadn't had coffee, smelled really bad, was tall and slim, liked to listen to country music, and had one eye and 3 legs. Otherwise known as a spunky, hanky, panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky, donkey. How'd I do, boys? The laughter and love in the video will be a memory that I know we all will cherish. And last but not least, he taught lessons in how to be a wonderful and supportive spouse. He did things out of love for Jan. Even if left to his own devices, he'd prefer to be doing something else. If you saw them together working in the garden, or at an arts and crafts festival, or at a home and garden show where Jan would get ideas and then tell Dennis to go build them, you'd know that Jan was there because she loved doing those things, and Dennis was there because he loved being with Jan. Now, 7.5 years later, Dennis and Jan are together again. I can only imagine that as soon as she saw him, she had him get a haircut, shave his beard, and take her to the nearest craft show to find the next project they'll work on together. And they're both very happy. Rabbi Abraham Jonathan Heschel captured the essence of the power and impact of teachers when he said, "What we need more than anything else isn't textbooks, but rather text people. It is the personality of the teacher which is the text that students read, the text that they'll never forget." The life of Dennis Herrill was truly a text that those who knew him will never forget. He was a genuinely good guy with a big heart who was never more than a phone call away when someone needed him. He loved being a dad, an uncle, and especially being a grandfather. He taught lessons that live on in his family and in those who were fortunate enough to know him. May those lessons and his memory always be a blessing. I love you, Dennis.
It was beautifully done, Jody. I can see why the family selected you to do that. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we will remember Dennis. In the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, in the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year when it ends, we will remember Dennis. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember Dennis. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he will always be a part of us as we remember him. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. In the Jewish religion, there are two prayers that we conclude with our service. One is called the El Malei Rachamim, which is a prayer that asks God to receive his soul, Dennis's soul, and grant him that peace that we all hope for. I will read that in Hebrew and then in English. The final prayer that we say is the Mourner's Kaddish. This is a long prayer in terms of its history. It is a prayer that is said at the end of every funeral, also at the conclusion of every portion of the Torah reading. It doesn't speak about death. It speaks about life, continuing with life, binding generations, and the belief in a deity. It's actually not a prayer that's written in Hebrew. It's written in Aramaic. It's also a prayer that parts of it were taken in Catholicism, the translation for the Lord's Prayer, and the Islam religion is a significant prayer. So I'm going to ask you all to stand as I recite these prayers. El Malei Rachamim Shochem Bramamim Amsei Menuchat Nachat Raka Kamfei Hashkinaim Kadoshim Utorim Kazoa Harakia Misrachim Es Nishmath Dennis Harrell Shalach Le'Lo Bial Harimim Yastarehu Pesezer Kanafos Le'Olim Vayisor Besor HaChayim Es Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Yehanuach B'Shalom HaMishkabav V'Namar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Dennis, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance, and may he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen. And now together, those who wish may recite with me, Yiskadav v'yiskadash shemei rabbah, v'yamal divrach yerusei v'yamlik malchusei, v'chayechol v'yomechol v'chaye techal beis Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mivarach le'olam u'lamei amaya, Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yisboar v'yisramam, v'yisaseh v'yisadar v'yisalev v'yisalal, Shemei Dekudesha Barichu, De'ela Mimkal Berchasa V'Shirasa, Tush B'chasa V'Nechamasa, Da'amri Ram B'Yama V'Yimru Amen, Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim, Aleinu V'Alkal Yisrael V'Yimru Amen, Oseh Shalom B'Mamav, Huya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Alkal Yisrael V'Yimru Amen. And we say to Dennis, Lechi Shalach Adonai, go your way, for God has called you. Lech Adonai Yeh Imecha, go your way, may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you, and grant you that everlasting peace we all search for. I wish to thank those in attendance here on behalf of Dennis's family for taking the time to be with us. The family will be receiving, following the conclusion of this service, at the residence, which is 1311 Clearview Road in Lyndhurst, Ohio, and they'll be there until 5 o'clock. If you wish to remember Dennis in some way, the family are suggesting two specific places. St. Jude's Hospital, which Dennis had a very bond to it. That's all I can say. It meant a lot to him to help, as Jody mentioned, to help kids and people. St. Jude's Hospital. The other is, of course, the Seidman Cancer Research Center, Carroll University Hospital's Cleveland Medical Center. Again, it's my privilege on behalf of the family to say to you, thank you for coming. And as your coming here was to find peace, so to your going be in peace. Let us all say, Amen.